I just want to, in what I'm going to share with you now, would like to draw some kind of bigger picture for you and myself to understand who we are. This is not a definite, unique picture of who you are as an individual. It's just more a broad conceptualization about an understanding of humanity, of what people are, what they consist of. Now, I'm of the opinion that we consist of primarily three different entities. You as an individual consist of three, in some way, quite clearly definable entities. The first is body, which is this house in which you live. It's a very, very complex system, the body. Very complex. If you were to talk to an eye doctor, he would tell you how complex that organ is, called the eye. And that's only one subsystem of the larger whole. But the body houses the rest of who you are. The second part of who you are, I believe, is the soul. Now this correlates. Okay, I must click that side goes on first. The soul is what I think psychology keeps itself busy with. And maybe also anthropology, sociology, social work. They keep themselves busy with the soul of man. And then there's a third part, I believe, called the spirit. Those are the three distinct entities, if you were to draw a distinction about a individual or an individual, that those three parts are quite clearly discernible. They're not necessarily as measurable. I'm not moving here from a purely scientific point of view, because you can never really measure the complete part called the spirit. It's on a different level that you have to think about it. I think the most measurable part of yourself is the body. We can subject that to scientific research, and we can cut off a finger and you feel pain, and we can really say when a finger is cut off, people feel pain, and we can inspect it and dissect it, take it apart and look at what it consists of. We can measure it. We can observe it with the physical senses. The soul, it seems like if one were to take the whole field in psychology of neuroscience, that they try to bring together the understanding of the soul and the effect of the brain, how the brain operates, and how the brain, for instance, lights up when you have certain thoughts or when you experience certain feelings. So they come closer to measuring the elements of the soul. And then the spirit, my personal take on it, we will never get from a scientific point of view to a place where we can measure it in any way accurately and completely. I don't think we're going to get there. But that doesn't need to deter us from not believing that there's such a thing as a spirit. You have a spirit. I truly believe man has got a spirit. Personally, I don't know how big it is. Some people translate the heart of man as being the spirit of man. And then obviously when they talk about the heart of man, they don't talk about that pumping blood through your veins. They more metaphorically refer to the heart of man as being the spirit of man. But it's not that measurable. We can only use words to describe. And that was the first job that we got, and we still have that job. It's to give names. We will never stop giving names to things. So when we encounter new experiences, new things, observe certain things, we start to give it names for our understanding of it. I sometimes think the spirit of man might be bigger, and sometimes much bigger, than the body that houses such a spirit. You might walk into a room and encounter someone, and you encounter actually his spirit in some way. But don't worry too much about my musings about the spirit. The soul, according to psychology, has got, if we break the soul down, according to psychology, it's got 3 distinct functions. The first one they call the cognition. And cognition is the ability to think. That's also maybe where we get the word recognize, is when you think about something that you've already seen before. So cognition is that ability to think. The second one in the soul is affection, or more commonly known, the ability to experience emotion. And the third part of the soul is called, in technical terms, conation, but that could equate in layman's understanding as the independent free will of a person. Those 3 entities, according to psychology, exist. We think, we feel, and we do. That's also the sequence in which the human sciences would say the brain operates. So you think, that leads to what you would feel, and that would drive your behavior. With every thought that you think, there is embedded or attached to every thought that your brain processes, there attached to it an emotion. And if we were to break emotion down a little bit further, we might say we've got positive emotion, negative emotion, and neutral emotion. A neutral emotion would be, this is a remote control. No one is happy and no one is sad about that. Then sad emotions, or feeling broken, feeling hurt, feeling traumatized, might be negative emotion. Feeling happy, elated, jovial, excited, etc. might be positive emotion. Whatever thought you think will carry and has got embedded into it an emotion. There is a school of thought in psychology that say if we can change the way you think, we can change your life. I subscribe to that school of thought, but not from a psychological point of view, more from Romans 12 verses 2 point of view. Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I think mind is bigger than just thinking. I haven't got handles on the whole concept of mind yet. Because sometimes when I, in the past, tested it with Koos, I realized that mind is insufficient. But I'll get there to define mind. Koos won't remember, but it was one morning while we were cycling. Then the spirit. And maybe in this case I lean on a guy with the name of Watchman Nee, that says if you break the spirit down, the spirit is fully functioning. The spirit is alive. The spirit has got 3 functions by which it operates as well. The first one is intuition. Intuition is a kind of, and please draw a distinction here, I'm not talking about the intuition as defined by the personality analysis. It might include that, but it goes beyond that too. The intuition that's used here is that ability to know something without necessarily observing it with your physical senses. So you know something without having it seen with these eyes, or smelled it with this nose, or heard it with these ears, tasted it with this mouth, or touched it with this skin. But you know it. You might not be able to explain yourself, but you have that sense of knowing. I'm all the more thinking that the spirit has got a mind of its own as well. But it gets complex. I don't want to go too complex with you on this. The second one is conscience, in Afrikaans called gewete. Your ability to distinguish between right and wrong. I'm of the school of thought that believes that comes from your spirit. You're born with it. Nobody needs to tell you you should not commit murder. You would know it yourself without having read it, learned it in a cultural value, or have been told not to murder. And then the third one is the ability to commune, to connect, to fellowship, to, I don't know, that is a deep thing, to commune, to truly commune with another. One can commune with a soul as well, but there is a lack of depth when you commune only, when you fellowship only with the soul. But when you fellowship with the Spirit, in the Spirit, so to speak, then the community, the fellowship is very deep. And it affects you, it touches you, you know that you've connected. Within this framework, I draw a distinction on both a spirit level and a soul level. A fundamental distinction, a primary distinction. And on the spirit level, I draw a distinction between people whose spirits are inhabited by the Holy Spirit and people whose spirits are not inhabited by the Holy Spirit. And my whole approach in life towards both of them would be different. Obviously, love will be there. There are things fundamentally that will be there. Respect will be there. Unconditional positive regard will be there. Some empathy will be there. But when it comes to journeying with a client who doesn't have the Holy Spirit in his spirit, I journey differently. And when a person has got the Holy Spirit in his spirit, I journey again differently as opposed to the other one. Purely because of need. This one does not have a need to talk to me about Jesus, for instance, or to hear God's plan for his life, especially if he's an atheist or a non-believer. He doesn't want to go there in a conversation and say, what's God's plan for me? No, I don't want to know what's God's plan. I want to know what's my plan. So then I journey differently. Because I do not have a very deep-seated need to get everyone born again. There are people with such a passion, maybe we call them evangelists, and they got that lack of emotional intelligence, but they're very great in connecting with people. And they don't care connecting with people in the row while they wait to pay for their bread. I care. I don't connect with you about spiritual things in that row, in that queue, because I don't do that. And I'm not that extroverted. I'm not that in need to see you get born again. Maybe the Lord has got a different plan for you. But he's not using me. Like he doesn't use me with my brothers, my blood brothers. But I know there are people that he uses with them. So that's a fundamental distinction that I draw. There are people that what I call born again, and there are people that are not born again. And keep in mind, I do not draw a distinction while I stand and eat under the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't let your mind take me there, because I don't stand there. I draw a distinction while I stand under the tree of life. So my distinction is not judgmental towards the one side which I do not belong to. Not at all. So I'm not saying those that are not born again are in the wrong. I'm just saying they're not born again. It's just a distinction. I do not attach a value or a judgment or a cancellation of those kind of people. They are equally as valuable in the eyes of God as I am. They need the same grace that I need. Like one of my mentors asked me one day, what do you think is the ultimate thing the person who is not born again needs? And I ventured an answer and I say, Jesus. He says, good answer. Now let me ask you, what do you think does the born again person need? Fundamentally, most important thing he needs. Same answer, Jesus. We don't need something else, we need the same. So we live under the same grace. But I draw a distinction to get my work done. I have to draw that distinction. On the soul level, I also draw a fundamental distinction, and you've heard me on that, and I can get quite passionate about that, which I ask apology for, because it's not called for all the time. But there are people that eat from the tree of life, and there are people that eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they function fundamentally totally different from one another. And now you can get combinations. Person born again, that eats on the spirit level, on the soul level eats from the tree of life. When you encounter those people, box them up, take them home, because they are wonderful. You will just want to sit in their presence, or just be with them, because they are awesome people to me. Then you get people that are born again, but they eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil primarily. Don't box them up and take them home. Not while you're on my course, because I want to contaminate you to the other side, not to the side of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But be Christ to them as well, so that they can see they can eat of the tree of life, which is actually Christ himself. So they can stop judge others and put others in a box and cancel others. And maybe they come into love, because if you eat of the tree of life, you want to love. Then you get people who are not born again, but they eat of the tree of life. It's a mystery to me, but I've met some of them. And I actually sometimes wish I could box them up and take them home as well. And then you get people who are not born again and they eat of the tree of life, run. Of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's a double whammy. That's a difficult one. No, don't run. Love them. I just wanted to state it proverbially. That's fundamental distinctions that I draw. You need not to draw my distinctions. It's just fundamental distinctions that took me quite some years to get to. And to see it like I'm explaining it to you now. For you, it might just have come quickly. For me, it takes a while. I'm a slow learner. That is just a basic framework I wanted to give you in terms of, on a paradigmatic level, distinctions that I draw about us in the broad context of being human. Because that's what you and I work with when we become coaches. We work with people. We work with change. We work with transformation.